The study was quiet that evening, with only the soft ticking of the clock on the mantelpiece breaking the silence. Dr. Watson sat in his favorite armchair, a medical journal open on his lap but unread. His mind wandered, as it frequently did, to the events that changed his life forever. 3 years earlier, his friend Sherlock Holmes had met his end at the Reichenbach Falls in Switzerland, locked in combat with the criminal mastermind Professor Moriarty. Watson sighed and set the journal aside. The loss still felt fresh. No one could replace Holmes in his life or in the world of detection. He had tried to move on, focusing on his practice and his wife, but the thrill of their investigations lingered like a ghost in his daily routine. A slight creak from the direction of the window drew his attention. He glanced over, expecting to see nothing unusual. The curtains were drawn and the room was secure. But as he watched, a tall, lean figure stepped out from behind the heavy drapes. Watson jumped to his feet, his heart racing. The figure advanced into the lamplight. It was Holmes. The detective stood there, his eyes bright and his expression unchanged by time.
Holmes!
Watson exclaimed, his voice cracking with emotion.
Is this real, or am I dreaming?
Holmes smiled faintly.
It is real, Watson. I am here.
Watson took a step closer, reaching out as if to touch him.
But you died. I published the story of your final battle. The world believes you gone. I know.
Holmes said.
That was by design.
He paused to let the words sink in. Watson sank back into his chair, overwhelmed.
Explain yourself, for heaven's sake!
Holmes sat down across from him.
After I grappled with Moriarty and hurled him into the abyss, I realized his network would not rest. His gang of ruffians and spies would seek revenge if they learned I survived. So I faked my death. I climbed the cliff to safety and then vanished into the world, adopting disguises and living quietly for a time. I journeyed to distant lands, including Tibet, where I spent some time with the lamas, to ensure no trace remained for the gang to follow.
He leaned forward.
The danger was too great to risk contact, even with you.
Watson listened, stunned. His friend had been alive all this time, hiding from danger. Holmes continued.
Now the remaining members are scattered, but still a threat. I have returned to finish what we started. There is much to do, and I could not do it without you.
Watson nodded slowly, the shock giving way to joy.
It is good to have you back, Holmes. Though I must say, this is the greatest surprise of my life.
The two men sat in silence for a moment, the bond between them as strong as ever. The past had returned in the form of his old friend, and Watson knew their adventures were far from over. The reunion had barely settled when Holmes rose to his feet, his sharp eyes already focused on the task ahead.
Watson, we cannot delay. The death of Ronald Adair presents a puzzle that requires our full attention. A locked room, a single shot, and a man of position found lifeless at his card table. There are clues waiting for us to read them properly.
Watson followed without hesitation, his heart light despite the grim errand. They walked through the misty evening, the gas lamps casting long shadows on the pavement. The address was in a respectable part of town, where such violence seemed out of place. When they arrived, a constable stood guard at the entrance. The inspector in charge recognized Holmes at once and waved them inside.
This way, gentlemen. The room is just as we left it after removing the body.
They climbed the narrow stairs to the first floor. The study door showed signs of having been broken in, but the lock mechanism indicated it had been fastened securely from the inside. The key had been found on the floor beside the threshold. The room itself was modest in size, furnished with a writing desk against one wall and a round table in the center. Upon that table lay the remnants of a card game. Several cards were face up, and others were scattered as though the players had risen suddenly. A chair lay on its side near the hearth. Holmes went directly to the window. He tested the latch and found it firm. No scratches marred the paint, and the glass was intact. He examined the floor beneath it for footprints or other marks, but the carpet showed only the usual wear.
Remarkable,
he murmured.
Everything suggests the room was sealed tight.
Watson stood by the table, studying the cards.
Adair was known to play regularly. But who was his partner that night? There is no sign of another person having left in haste.
Holmes turned his attention to the wall opposite the window. There, embedded in the plaster, was a small hole. He probed it gently with a pencil.
The bullet passed through here after striking the victim. Its trajectory is odd, almost as if fired from an elevated position or with great precision.
From the carpet near the fallen chair, he lifted a flattened piece of lead. The shape was irregular, compressed as if from high impact.
Not a standard revolver round.
Holmes noted.
This suggests a weapon designed for silence and accuracy, perhaps one that could be used from outside without entering the room at all.
The implications were chilling. A hidden marksman, capable of striking through a closed window or from an impossible angle, pointed to a foe who operated in secrecy, with advanced methods. They spent the next half hour combing the space for additional evidence. A single playing card with a torn corner lay under the desk, but it revealed nothing immediately. The air in the room felt heavy with the weight of the unsolved crime. Finally, Holmes straightened and looked at Watson.
We have seen enough for now. The clues suggest a dangerous adversary who remains out of sight. Our investigation has only begun.
Watson met Holmes's steady gaze and felt the familiar thrill of the chase. Then let us prepare our trap without delay, he said. The two men left the cluttered room behind and ventured out into the misty streets of London. Their destination was an abandoned house on the edge of the city, a place chosen for its isolation and shadows. Holmes explained the plan as they walked. He would place a decoy in the window to lure the killer inside, while they hid in the adjoining room, ready to spring the ambush. The empty house would serve as the perfect stage for their confrontation, its forgotten rooms providing cover and mystery. Upon arrival, the house greeted them with silence and dust. They worked quickly to set the scene. A tall figure fashioned from wax and clothing stood outlined against the light from a single lamp. Holmes checked his revolver once more before signaling Watson to his post. The empty rooms echoed with their careful footsteps as they positioned themselves behind a heavy curtain in the corner. The wait began in earnest. Minutes turned into hours, each sound from the street below heightening their senses. Watson strained to hear any sign of approach. The air grew thick with tension, the weight of the unsolved crime pressing upon them. Watson recalled the playing card with its torn corner, wondering how it fit into the larger puzzle that Holmes seemed to have already solved in his mind. Holmes remained composed, his sharp mind reviewing every detail they had collected. The torn card was a key, but it was the overall pattern that had led them here. Watson trusted his friend's judgment completely, knowing that the trap would succeed if they held their nerve. Suddenly, a faint creak echoed from the staircase. The door swung open, and a shadowy figure slipped inside. It was the man they had been hunting, drawn by the silhouette in the window. He advanced cautiously, his hand clutching a pistol, his eyes scanning the room for any movement. Holmes emerged from the darkness. "It is over," he announced, his voice firm. "Your plot to remove me from the scene has been uncovered. The evidence we gathered points directly to you." The intruder spun around, recognition dawning on his features. "Sherlock Holmes, I thought you were gone for good." "Not yet," Holmes replied. "Your playing card left behind betrayed you, linking you to the crime. We have been waiting for you to return to the scene, and now you have walked right into our trap. Watson, secure him." A brief struggle followed as the killer lunged forward, attempting to escape through the door, but the duo overpowered him swiftly, using the element of surprise to their advantage. With the man bound and the evidence secured, Holmes straightened up, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "This trap has not only exposed the killer, but also marks my return to active service," he said to Watson. "The game is once again afoot, and justice will prevail as the authorities take charge from here."